Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. Later in the show, and in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month, Puerto Rican pianist Carli Munoz, whose musical journey from the island to New York to L.A. is chronicled in his upcoming book, A Fool's Journey to the Beach Boys and Beyond. He'll share some of his story before his performance at Smith later this week, and he'll play for us.
And we'll get into the reopening of Pothole Pictures up in Shelburne Falls. But first...
to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Time for some more kitchen table astronomy with Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Hamid at your Amherst kitchen table. In the coming weeks, we're going to do a segment about something that we have talked a lot about and that we are quite skeptical of: space tourism. You're going to go and potentially experience a friend who is going to be a space tourist.
Yes, so I am going to New Mexico. So this particular flight is for Virgin Galactic. And this person, she's from Pakistan, so she's the first Pakistani space tourist and things like that. So yeah, I was invited to go and watch it. So I think it would be really cool. I mean, we have talked about it. There is skepticism, but on the other hand, this will also be an opportunity to actually see up close what happens and how do people think about it. So I'm excited, and I would love to talk about it after I come back. Not to mention that I get to go back to Las Cruces, New Mexico State, where I did my PhD.
Nice.
So I'm really looking forward to visiting the department again. I absolutely loved it. And yes, Amherst is great. Fabulous 413 is fabulous. But I absolutely love New Mexico and the weather over there and the big skies.
Yeah,
and
they have better aliens than we do.
Better aliens, real ones, not the fake ones.
But today we are talking about the moon, where science fiction has warned us never to travel because, potentially, it is one of the best places in our solar system for life. What are we talking about today?
So we are talking about Jupiter's moon, Europa. For people who did not get the reference that Monty made, that is to 2010, the sequel to 2001 Space Odyssey. And few people have read the book, and fewer still watched that sequel. I think it's fine. It's a good sequel. But spoiler alert, but that came out like 40 years ago, so I think it's okay. But at the end of the movie, Arthur C. Clarke's warning comes in that, or the aliens in Space Odyssey, whatever they are, that all worlds are yours except Europa. Attempt no landing there. And at the time, actually, we did not know that Europa had an ocean under the ice sheet. We did not know it was an interesting place. So the most likely explanation is that Arthur C. Clarke is an alien.
Love it.
But
always jump right to alien. That's what science says. When you don't know something, must be an alien.
Well,
UAP added to the Merriam-Webster dictionary last week, though.
Wow,
Yeah.
That is really cool. And
unidentified aerial phenomena. Yeah.
And I should mention that with that kind of scrutiny, as I gave you, I should be testifying in front of Congress.
Exactly.
But yeah, so the ocean of Europa is an interesting place. We know that normally people used to think in terms of habitable zone, and that is the distance of a planet from its star where water can exist in liquid form. So, of course, the Earth is in the habitable zone. It's neither too close or too far away. The water can exist in liquid form. It's also called the Goldilocks zone. But with moons of giant planets like Jupiter and Saturn, we discovered that you can also have large moons where the interior is being heated by something called like the tidal forces of the giant planet, meaning to say it squishes it, like near side is experiencing a little more gravity than the far side, and because it's an elliptical orbit, as it goes around, the interior got sort of like squished, and you can actually have volcanoes. Now, on top of it, like Europa, you have an ice sheet. So you can have liquid water, ice basically, that is melting because of the underwater volcanoes, but it's not evaporating because you have an ice sheet on top. Mm-hmm. So that's what makes Europa a really exciting place. If you get too close, there is another moon, big moon, Io. It's all volcanism. But if you, again, so Europa is a little bit farther away that there is an ice sheet. And also there are other moons, Ganymede and Callisto, which we also think might be interesting. But Europa is a fascinating place. We know there is liquid water ocean, and we also know that that water is salty. And so the conditions are there for life and potentially for life, and that's what a lot of focus is on.
There was some recent discoveries about Europa.
Back to James Webb Space Telescope. Cannot take a break from it. We always talk about galaxies that are far, far away.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
But it is also looking at our own solar system. And again, it is looking in the infrared with very high precision. And so there was Hubble Space Telescope observations that had found, that actually showed that there is definitely sodium chloride or salt in the oceans of Europa. So James Webb Space Telescope looked at in the infrared, and it found evidence of carbon dioxide. And it's not even distributed over the entire moon, but rather a much more localized region. The region is called Terra Regio, and it finds that there is a definite signal of carbon dioxide, and more interestingly, it looks like it is coming from the ocean underneath. Because you can have a signal like that, for example, of carbon coming from meteoroids crashing on it and things like that. But this particular region is what astronomers technically call a chaos region, because the material is mixing up from the ocean underneath. So there is ice sheet, and it has been cracked up a little, and the ocean water is gurgling through to a certain degree. And they found signal of carbon dioxide in that region.
And why is that exciting?
We don't know why there is carbon dioxide in there, but it tells you potentially that carbon, which is an important element for life, that it exists there, and it exists there mixed up with the ocean. So that means that something is producing it. Now, there can be many different ways to produce carbon dioxide, but it shows that the conditions in the oceans of Europa may be similar to conditions on Earth. So potentially there can be life. So I don't think anybody is claiming yet that this carbon dioxide is being burped out.
I am. Europa, mermaids, and mermen.
That's right.
He's a human. You're a mermaid.
That doesn't make us enemies.
But it just tells you that the conditions in Europa's oceans contain carbon, and it's also oxygenated if it's carbon dioxide. So it just leads to one step closer to thinking about this is a place which is, and no pun intended, completely alien in terms of the way we think about life, but rather it is a place where the conditions are such that we are familiar with those conditions here on Earth where life is plentiful.
Is there a plan, in violation of Arthur C. Clarke's cautionary tale in 2010, to go to Europa and maybe take a sample to see if there actually is life in the underwater ocean of that moon of Jupiter?
Absolutely. So next year there is a big NASA mission going. It's called Europa Clipper mission. It's going to observe Europa pretty closely. That is its primary mission. It's not going to send sort of a robot probe yet.
We'll attempt no landing there.
No landing there. There is another mission from the European Space Agency, which is called JUICE. No connection to Lizzo. But it is a Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer. Its primary target is Ganymede, actually, but it's also going to observe Europa and Callisto. Both of these missions, I think, are expected to get there around 2030. And so there's going to be a lot of studies that are going to be there. One other thing, considering about the same observation that I mentioned about the detection of carbon dioxide, one thing that scientists were looking for were actually plumes from Europa emanating out. There were some detections from Hubble Space Telescope, and they did not find it. The reason it's connected is because one of the things they're trying to do is that you can actually fly close to Europa. So, for example, with Europa Clipper, and it can actually sample the material coming from the oceans below. Unfortunately, even though there were a couple of potential detections before, this new observations by James Webb Space Telescope did not find any plumes that could be detected. Doesn't mean that the plumes are not there anymore, but it's possible that they may be periodic, they may not, or at least sort of like, they don't stay for a long time, or they come in and out for various reasons. But that's another thing, that when the mission goes, even without landing on Europa, you can actually analyze material that's coming out that has been done for Saturn's moon, Enceladus. I mean, these places are fascinating, and I would bet, and so, Monty, to your claim about aliens, I think it would be weirder if we go and look at the oceans of these moons, which we know have organic compounds. We know because they're common in the universe. They are brought in by meteoroids and other places. We know there is heat because there are underwater volcanoes, and you have liquid water. I mean, to think about, for billions of years, those conditions have existed, and even microbes didn't come about. I think, to me, that would be far more surprising than to find microbes, which would be amazing. What kind of life form would that be? Would it be based on DNA? Would it be different types of molecules? So on and so forth. So there'd be fascinating questions. But to me, it would be far more surprising if there is no life there.
And if we found even that one microbe, it would change the entire course of human events.
Yeah, we would just have to think very differently, because then it would mean that, well, life is actually really, really common. And you mentioned 2010 or 2001 Space Odyssey, of course. If you have less patience for longer films, there was a very small indie film called Europa Report that came out, I think, about 6-7 years ago. Find it. It's like, low budget, sci-fi, thoughtful, but it's sort of like, a sober film about a mission to Europa. That's another take on that.
And with U2 taking over the Sphere in Las Vegas, they're doing Octoon Baby, which was, of course, a precursor to what might be their greatest album, Zooropa.
All right, that's right. Well, I don't know if there is life on Zooropa or not. Intelligent life, I don't know. Oh, I shouldn't criticize.
Don't make fun of Bono.
Bono, I'm sorry.
Europa is such a good album.
I love that album. They only kept going in that direction.
I know, right?
I know. Later in the show, Live Music Monday with Puerto Rican keyboard phenomenon Carli Munoz, who's played with everyone from Wilson Pickett to the Beach Boys. He's playing for free at Smith this Thursday. He's got a new book coming out, and he'll play for us later in the show.
Up next, the triumphant return of Pothole Pictures to Memorial Hall Theater in Shelburne Falls with curator Andrew Baker. You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM. Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. We welcome Andrew Baker, the founder of Pothole Pictures in Shelburne Falls.
In March of 2020, Pothole Pictures was on the verge of celebrating 25 years as a volunteer-run community movie theater, and then something happened. I have no idea what it was.
But after a prolonged pandemic pause, Pothole Pictures picks up from where it packed it in Saturday. Andrew Baker, welcome to the Fabulous 413.
Thank you for having me.
That's such a little...
So many P's.
I know, I couldn't help it. Peter Piper picked a peck of peppers. And Pothole Pictures is what we're talking about, so that's why I fell victim to the alliteration. Tell us about opening night. What's going to happen at this resurgence of Pothole Pictures on Saturday?
Well, we have an appropriate reawakening film. We're going to be reaching way back and starting with a wonderful silent movie made in 1916. It's the silent version of Snow White.
Uh-huh.
And the hook there is that we have a composer harpist named Leslie McMichael who's written an original music score for this film and will be coming to perform it live with her sister Barbara, who performs on viola. So we'll have harp and viola accompanying the 1916 Snow White that inspired Walt Disney.
Have you watched this silent film version of it?
I have not seen it yet.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it either. So
Yeah,
I'm wondering how similar it is to the Disneyfied version of it, because a lot of those fairy tales are more, if you'll pardon the pun, grim.
And frankly, like Walt Disney got a lot of inspiration from some of those early movies to put in the early films, too. What started this combination of film and local music for Pothole Pictures?
Well, let me just start by saying that Walt Disney did see this movie in 1916 as a 15-year-old.
Wow.
And it inspired him 20 years later to make the animated version of Snow White, which was the first full-length animated movie ever made. So this movie has a connection to Walt Disney in that way.
Yeah.
But we started really down this road of doing kind of special event movies that combine music with silent films, or what we call our Meet the Director kind of movies, where it's not necessarily always the director, but somebody involved with the film comes and presents it and kind of gives us the behind-the-scenes look at that movie. I think part of the reason we did that was, one, to feature movies that are made in New England or have a connection to New England. And the other
does Snow White have a connection to New England?
No,
okay.
no, but the musicians do.
Oh, there we go. Great.
and the other was really to really create one-of-a-kind events that you can't replicate in your home, but you have to come down to the theater to take part in.
Yeah, there's something magical about seeing things on the big screen, first of all, even though the screens in many people's houses have gotten bigger and bigger over the years. But seeing it together with folks, especially with live music, is really exciting. It's happening. The relaunch of Pothole Pictures this Saturday in Shelburne Falls. For those who don't know, why is Pothole Pictures called Pothole Pictures? It is not a complaint against the DPW of Shelburne or Buckland.
Well, the reason I chose that name back in 1995 was really that we are right around the corner from the glacial potholes, which are this tremendous geological feature that you can see in the riverbed of the Deerfield River right in downtown Shelburne Falls.
That you used to be able to swim in, which was really fun.
You used to be able to go down and just walk around in them, but it's not. Yeah. They don't let people. It's not safe anymore.
I know. It's very sad.
Yes.
My grandma and I used to swim in the potholes.
So you tell us about the birth of this. When you said 1990 was when, or 95?
1995.
When you started this idea. Tell us what inspired you to start showing movies and doing some creative things with them in this beautiful gem of I think it's the largest theater once you reopen in Franklin County, right? 400 seats?
No, I don't think it quite has that.
Well, there might be some on university places or campuses, perhaps.
I think the high school auditorium is bigger.
I'm not
than
counting
ours,
them.
But for theaters, yes, we probably are the largest. But no, I started Pothole Pictures as part of a larger effort to revive and revitalize the Memorial Hall Theater, which is on the second and third floors of the Shelburne Town Hall. And it's like many New England towns, it has a town hall theater. This one had been closed for about 30 years prior to 1995, in part because it was not handicap accessible, and in part really because single-screen movie theaters kind of died out in the 1960s and 70s. They were no longer economically viable once the multiplexes started to come in. And our hall had a single-screen theater from about the 1930s to the 1960s, and then it went dark. And we were fortunate to get a grant, a large $1 million grant from the Community Development Block Grant Program to do a downtown revitalization program. And I got hired out of planning school to help run that grant and to serve as the first director of the Business Association. And so one of our projects was to put an elevator into the hall that would make the theater usable once again. So when we did that, then the local editor of the paper said, well, what should we do with the theater? And he was an amateur thespian, so he started the West County Players, and they did plays there for many years. And I sort of raised my hand and said, well, I've always loved movies and watched old movies in college, and I'll help you start a movie theater. And so
That's so great. What was the first movie you showed in 1995? Do you remember?
I do, clearly, because it was nominated by our projectionist, and it was around the world in 80 days, and that's the projectionist is really the hook of the story of why we got to be a theater. He's a guy, and retired machinist named Bernie Butler, who worked at Mayhew Tools for many years, and he moonlighted at the Carl Nillman's movie theater from about the 40s to the 60s.
Wow.
Whoa.
And when that theater closed, Carl Nillman allowed him to keep the old carbon arc projectors. And because he was a machinist, he kept them in working order in his basement.
Whoa.
And so when I said I wanted to start a movie theater, people said, well, go talk to Bernie. And I got to know Bernie, and we kind of brought him out of retirement. He brought his projectors back, and we were in business. So we gave Bernie first pick of the movies there.
So will you be using these projectors this weekend, or has the technology moved on?
Unfortunately, both Bernie has moved on to greener pastures. He died in the early 2000s. And at right about the same time that the whole movie industry was going digital.
Right.
And we had to go digital with it. So unfortunately, we no longer have those wonderful carbon arc projectors.
What a great story, though.
Yeah.
I would love to have seen that.
But we had a great run with Bernie for about 10 years or so.
What was the first one that brought in a local artist for the music component of it?
Actually, that was a project I did with my downstairs housemate, whose name is Peter Blanchette.
Who is a dear friend.
And
Really?
Peter
An
now
incredible
lives in,
musician.
Peter lives in Northampton, but I teamed up with Don Sanders at the Massachusetts International Festival of the Arts, and we raised some grant money, and we hired Peter to write an original music score to Buster Keaton's The General.
Oh, wow.
And we performed, and he came with a band and performed that live. And it that year, which was 1996, Kodak had just remastered The General. So it was like watching a museum set of images of one of the greatest movies ever made. And Peter's group just really brought it to life. We sold out the theater for 3 nights. It was kind of we hit the peak early there. We've never replicated that. But,
Who knows what'll happen with this series?
Exactly,
right.
because you've been gone for 3 years, and I
That's
think
right.
maybe people have realized the gem that they have. Plus, your season is really, really great. But is there a difference between your fall-winter season versus your spring-summer season?
Not really, no.
Okay. It just seems to have
That's
different
actually
prestige.
kind of, again, part of our history is when we reopened the theater, we had an elevator, but we had no heating or cooling system.
Yeah.
And so we started these little seasons, as we call them, in the fall and in the spring, and we ran movies until it got too cold or until it got too hot. And then we stopped until the next sort of temperate season. And we've kind of kept that rhythm because we're a volunteer group and we need a little breather. And so
Although you do have films in January and February. So is the heat on now? Or?
we do have a heating and cooling system.
Yeah, that's good. Because those buildings are hard to heat.
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Yes.
The return of Pothole Pictures begins this Saturday with Snow White, a silent film with an original musical score live by composer, harpist Leslie McMichael and her sister, Barbara McMichael, on the viola. And then there's a bunch of other great movies.
Really fantastic movies.
With scores, too, like movies that are more contemporary that you wouldn't expect to have these new scores with them, like Dr. Strangelove coming.
Right. Well, not a score with the movie, but
okay. So
but
that's
music
that's
another
before the movie.
another feature of ours
I
is
see.
music at the movies.
Got it.
We invite local musicians to come and volunteer their time, since we're kind of a volunteer theater, and we pass the hat for them, and they play for half an hour in front of the movie. So it's kind of like the old newsreels or whatever, where you have some free entertainment before the movie starts.
That's amazing, because I had thought that there was going to be like a fiddle accompaniment to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, the Ang Lee movie, which I love, which would be incredible, but isn't actually what's happening.
We're bringing on a new punk soundtrack to Mystery Train, which is on this list. I'm so happy to see that movie on this list. I love that movie.
Right, the Jim Jarmusch.
Yes.
It's an excellent movie.
It is fantastic.
Yeah, Moonrise Kingdom, even more contemporary, the Wes Anderson film with live musical accompaniment before that. And then this part of the season in February will end with a sing-along.
Yes.
To Mary Poppins.
Right. I think eclectic mix is what characterizes our choice of movies for the season. We try to mix up the decades of the films, have some classics, some indie films, some documentaries, some foreign films, and that's been one of the sort of hallmarks of Pothole Pictures, is kind of mixing it up and trying to find something for everybody.
Andrew Baker, who is the founder of Pothole Pictures in Shelburne Falls, essentially a volunteer to bring these films back to this historic theater that has been on pandemic pause. But you're also a select board member?
I have been serving on the Shelburne Select Board for the last 8 years.
What does this theater mean for the health of downtown Shelburne Falls?
Oh, I think it's essential for any town to have a theater of some kind. I know you, Monty, have been vital in reviving the Shea Theater or creating the Shea Theater in Turner's Falls.
I didn't create it. I did form a nonprofit board that revived that theater. That was been going around since 1925. So yeah.
Well, Turner's is kind of on the east side of Greenfield, and we're the Falls on the west side of Greenfield. But every small town, I think. When I look back in history, when I was starting to research this, I was amazed that all across New England there are these small town theaters. And I think a theater is really, when you look back in, even to the ancient Greeks and their amphitheaters, we all need a theater in our community to tell stories in. And, I think this has had a great run since 1895, and we're just feel excited to be able to bring it to life and keep even though I think in a town of 1,700 people, it's pretty darn hard to make a commercially viable theater there.
I know it.
So volunteer run is how we do it.
I also know that.
we kind of learn to make our own fun in little towns,
Right on.
Andrew Baker from Pothole Pictures, which will return this Saturday and has a great season ahead. Thank you so much for bringing the lights back to that theater and bringing so much great theater to downtown Shelburne Falls.
Well, thank you again for having me. It was great to be part of this, and as an NEPM supporter, it's wonderful to see your spot down here and see all the different things you're doing.
We appreciate the shameless plug.
We did not ask for the shameless plug.
Well, I know how important it is to keep radio on the air.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for saying so.
On the way, musician Carli Munoz. Local publisher Interlink Books releases his book on October 10th. Carli Munoz will be telling stories and performing at Smith College this Thursday, but he's telling stories and playing for us now. Up next, you're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. I'm Monty Belmonte.
And I'm Clee Smith. Local publishers Interlink Books have a new release called A Fool's Journey to the Beach Boys and Beyond by Carli Munoz.
Munoz is the former pianist for the Beach Boys, and the new book is a tell-all memoir chronicling the Forrest Gumpian journey through the 1960s and 70s music scene, from jazz and psychedelic rock to touring the world with the Beach Boys.
It includes never-before-told stories about the Beach Boys and gives insight to the mind of this Puerto Rican-born musician who has strived to live, love, experience, and create with all his heart and soul. Munoz will be celebrating his new book, telling stories, and performing for free this Thursday at 7 p.m. at Sage Hall at Smith College.
We are also welcoming Michel Mouchabek, the founder, publisher, editor of Interlink Publishing, based in Northampton, who will be accompanying the great Carli Munoz, who will be playing keyboard. On percussion, let's start out with a tune. I'll tell you what, nothing makes me feel like this is Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood for Grown-Ups more than hearing improvisational jazz piano like that in the studio. That was Carli Munoz, who is the Puerto Rican-born keyboard player being assisted by Michel Mushabek, who is not only an extraordinary percussionist, but also the publisher behind Interlink Publishing, who is publishing Carli Munoz's new tell-all memoir, A Fool's Journey to the Beach Boys and Beyond. I guess maybe the first question might be to you, Michel. Was it the world of jazz that brought you to the stories of Carli Munoz and wanting to publish his stories?
It's a long story, but I'll give you the short end of it. You know, Carli and I became friends when we started going to Puerto Rico, and I spend at least 4 months of every year in Puerto Rico.
Nice.
I escaped the winter in New England.
I'm going to be joining you one of these years.
So I met Carli at his restaurant in Old San Juan, at Carli's bistro and piano bar. And one day I just happened to have my cajon with me when I was there because I had another gig. So
Happened to have it.
And a cajon is the drum,
instrument will travel.
the seat-shaped box drum that you
don't
were
leave
playing.
home without it.
Right.
So I started jamming with Carli, and that was 20 years ago.
Wow.
And we've become close friends. And then during the pandemic, he told me, "Hey, I'm writing a book." And to be honest, if I can be honest with you, I dreaded it because I said, "This is my friend, you know, and he's going to ask me to read the manuscript and publish it and whatever, and, you know." And I didn't know whether, I know he's an amazing jazz musician, but could he write? I didn't know that. But I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised, and I was blown away when I received his manuscript. It's a page turner. It's, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's a real chronicle of the 60s and 70s music scene, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing how much he remembered.
I know, given all the sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah, given.
But it's also fun not fun, but I think important to see more of those histories done not through European gaze, too. So it's really, it's such a cool premise. Well, it's not a premise, it's your life.
Yeah, you hear that, Jan Wenner?
Well, well, they say if you remember the 60s, we weren't there.
But there's pictures, hey.
I don't remember anything.
Carli does its best to remember in the new book, A Fool's Journey to the Beach Boys and Beyond. To the Beach Boys and Beyond makes sense.
Beyond is a big deal there.
Well, tell us about the Fool's Journey. Why is this called A Fool's Journey?
Well, I can identify with that. Firstly, it's been a journey, a real journey, ups and downs, and I look into the fool on the card, and the tarot card, which is like that symbol of this guy, this vagabond with this broom, spindle, and it's like going
about
through
to walk off a cliff.
Yeah, the cliff, and then the blue sky and the prairies, and that whole roller coaster up and down of life, which was my life, and beyond. Because it is not a. I just want to be clear. It's not a book about the Beach Boys. Mm-hmm. It is. An autobiography. Just the Beach Boys happened to be there in the middle of the sandwich.
Yeah,
they're like right in the middle. But it's like I chronicle my life before from the 50s. And then the Beach Boys, the time I spent with them, which was roughly 69 through 81 when I left. And then what happened after, which is it's all there.
And because you didn't just play with the Beach Boys, you played with Les McCann and with Chico Hernandez and with George Benson,
Wilson Pickett.
Ricky Lee Jones.
Yeah,
the Beach Boys were fans of Wilson Pickett, and that was part of why they really wanted me to play keyboards with them.
So cool.
We're speaking with Carli Munoz, who will be at Smith College performing for free 7 p.m. Sage Hall and talking about this new book that's published by the Northampton-based publisher Interlink Publishing, A Fool's Journey. Is part of the Fool's Journey deciding to leave Puerto Rico and go to New York with $11?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tell us about what motivated you to go to just up and leave the island where you grew up to come to New York City.
Well, by that time...
and what time were we talking about?
We're talking early 60s, let's say 64, 65, 66. We had a band. I was founder of a band called The Living End. Not to be confused, there was another later Living End I believe from Australia. It was a punk band, but it was The Living End. And we were very successful. But part of that success was we were doing a lot of LSD. And it was legal. You know, at that time it was still legal, and we just did it freely, and we loved playing LSD, which gave us tremendous edge because we could weed out what didn't work, and we were really aware of what we were doing. So, but at the same time, we became like the threat of society. So.
Because of the LSD, or because you were Puerto Rican, or why?
Yeah, no,
Both.
we were in Puerto Rico, so because of the LSD.
Yeah.
So we're like first page and main stream editorials, and as the kids who are perverting the other society and all that stuff. So we knew it was time to leave. Also, we won they used to have a lot of like contests, rock concerts. And contests, battles of the band. Battles of the band was a really big thing there.
Yeah.
And we won them all. I mean, there was really no other place to go. So we got this offer to go to St. Thomas, where the mamas and the papas were. And, that's just whole conundrum of, like music and more LSD. And, all the party favors.
Yeah. Kids, if you're listening, LSD is not the key to a successful music career.
Right.
But it was a different time.
Anymore.
It had a little something to do with it.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Right.
We're going to hear more about this fool's journey that's chronicled in the new Northampton-based published book, A Fool's Journey to the Beach Boys and Beyond, with Carli Munoz and with Michel Muschebach, and perhaps we can coax a little more music out of them before the end of the show.
You're listening to The Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
Welcome back to The Fabulous 413. I'm Monty Belmonte.
And I'm Clea Smith.
And we are joined in the studio by Carli Munoz, who is an extraordinary keyboard player and has a new memoir about his life in rock and roll and jazz called A Fool's Journey to the Beach Boys and Beyond. And we are also joined by Michel Muschebach, who is accompanying Carli on percussion, but is also the publisher behind this new book that's due out in about 10 days. And there will be an event at Sage Hall at Smith College about the book and the music on Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday, October 5th at 7 o'clock. And it's free and open to the public. And there's going to be an amazing jazz quintet as well. It's not just the two of us playing for you. There's going to be a conversation between the editor of the Massachusetts Review, Professor Jim Hicks, who just excerpted a chapter from Carli's memoir in this month's issue of the Massachusetts Review.
Oh, wicked cool.
Excellent.
And so he'll be asking Carli, he'll have a conversation with Carli, ask him some questions, then we're going to open it up for some Q&As, and then there's going to be a concert with the Carli Munoz Quintet.
All for free at 7 o'clock at Smith College Sage Hall this Thursday.
But I want to ask you about your music specifically, because I think your first solo album comes out in 2000. That's a long time time from your initial start. I want to talk about your journey to that album, and then I want to ask you about your new album.
Okay.
Yeah, so first, like, how did we get to your first solo album being so late?
Yeah, I know. It's kind of like a late bloomer there. I was... my father used to say, "Hey, Carli, you are too much of a perfectionist. If you keep going like that, you won't get anything done." So I believe that was a problem. I was like, waiting to make things perfect, the perfect situation, the perfect this, the perfect that, until I realized, his wise words, and that he was so right. And I just decided, okay, I just got to start doing what I want to do and not wait for that perfect moment, for that perfect thing, and it just triggered a stream of records and events that got me here today.
And was Maverick your first album?
No. The first one was
Love
Love
Tales.
Tales.
Oh, yes.
Which was piano solo. And then Eddie Gomez came to me, and he loved that, and he told me, and he said he wanted to produce a jazz album. And we love playing duo. which is crazy because the first time I played with Eddie Gomez on bass, it's like I was listening to him play, so I would get lost. you can't play with him and listen. You have to kind of like do your own thing, because he's just wild and crazy. He'll just go all over the place, which is a beautiful thing. But and it all works together. But you have to stay in your own thing. You can't concentrate on him. So then eventually I caught that, and we just had so much fun playing together. Then we added. He suggested Jack DeJohnette for drumming on Maverick. And, we've done quite a few projects together since, different drummers, and Joe Chambers and Billy Drummond, and all sorts of great musicians.
But this last album that you put out is another basically solo piano record, but the sound is entirely different. It's so sparse.
Okay, Galimatias.
Yeah.
You must be talking about Galimatias.
Yeah, Galimatias.
Yeah, well, Galimatias, it's actually originally it's a French word, but it comes from the Greeks and all that stuff, like everything. But Galimatias in English means a semic, which means it doesn't have a meaning. It doesn't have any kind of significant, it's anti-meaning. Anyway, so the real semic part of that is a vocal thing. If you notice, it sounds like kind of gibberish. Well, it is. It doesn't have any meaning whatsoever, and as far as I know, I mean, it's the only time that it's been done with the music. I mean, there was some, with the Dada movement, there were people doing that sort of thing, and more like in solo, vocal, performances. But with the music like that, with the avant-garde, contemporary piano avant-garde improvisations, it's a first.
Yeah, it was really interesting and striking to have it in the middle of the album. And, well, let's hear more of it.
Yeah, we're going to run out of time if we don't let you play a little bit more. But I'll just say that it's Carli Munoz's new memoir that's out soon through Interlink Publishing in Northampton, A Fool's Journey to the Beach Boys and Beyond. You can just answer this question yes or no before you get back to the music, because it is about the Beach Boys. Mike Love, as big of a horror story as I have been led to believe?
Yes.
I can't wait to read the book. I have a chef friend. Whenever anybody's a problem, they refer to him, to the problem person, as Mike Love. So that just
we did.
All right. Well, let's hear some more of Carli Munoz on the keyboard and Michel Mouchabek, who is the excellent percussionist and publisher of this book, A Fool's Journey to the Beach Boys and Beyond.
Do our outro now?
Yeah, let's just do our outro now, and then you can keep playing there. That tomorrow on the Fabulous 413, we're meeting another mayor. We head to North Adams to talk with Mayor Jennifer Maxey about her life in civil service and about her re-election campaign and infrastructure.
And we'll also make a trip to the Holyoke Farmers Market to hang out with its brand new market manager, Alexis Diaz de Jesus, and some of the farmers you can meet there before they shift into winter market mode.
Special thanks to Spouse, Happy Valley Guitar Orchestra, Mary Poppins, Star Trek, David Tennant, Ahsoka, Lizzo, U2, and Carli Munoz.
And now we'll hear more from Carli Munoz.